Wife made me a tea that smelled weird. I quietly switched the cups with my annoying sister-in-law. Please stay with me as I tell my story. And please, do not forget to support our channel by subscribing to our channel, liking our videos, and sharing your loved one. Your support means the world to us. Now to our story. Poke. The moment she handed me the tea, I knew something was off, not just with the smell, but with the way she smiled. Too wide, too fake. I took the cup, pretending not to notice. Lena stood in front of me, arms crossed, eyes locked onto mine. She didn't sit down. She just watched. It's chamomile, she said too quickly. You look tired. I nodded. Thanks. I brought the cup to my lips, but the smell hit me first. Sharp. Strange. Almost metallic. Not like any tea I'd ever had. My stomach turned before I even sipped. Lena didn't blink. Over by the TV, her sister Tanya was sprawled across the couch, scrolling through her phone with her feet on the coffee table. She'd been staying with us for the past few weeks after her breakup. Loud. Rude. Always laughing at things that weren't funny. Flirting with me when Lena wasn't looking, or maybe when she was. I shifted in my seat and set the cup on the table. You're not drinking it? Lena asked, tone too light to be natural. Just letting it cool a bit, I said. She nodded, went to the kitchen to grab her phone. That's when I did it. A simple switch. My cup for hers. Same mugs, nearly the same amount. Tanya barely looked up when I handed her the other one. Here, I said, try this one, it's still hot. She shrugged and took it, already distracted by a TikTok video. Lena came back into the room. Her eyes went straight to my hand, now holding the untouched cup. Feeling better? She asked Tanya. Tanya mumbled, sipping. A minute passed. Then another. Tanya frowned. She clutched her stomach. Ugh, what the hell? She whispered, standing up, wobbling. I watched her face change from confusion to panic. Her hands trembled. She dropped the cup. It shattered. Lena rushed over. Tanya? What's wrong? Tanya couldn't answer. She collapsed, knocking the coffee table sideways. I stood up, pretending to panic like them. Lena screamed for me to call 911. I did. My voice shook just enough. By the time the ambulance arrived, Tanya was unconscious. I followed them out, held Lena's hand, said nothing. She was shaking, muttering, I don't know what happened. I don't know. But I did. I knew exactly what happened. And for now, I'd keep that to myself. Tanya was in the ICU for 2 days. They said she'd had internal bleeding and needed emergency surgery. The doctors pumped her stomach and kept her under close watch. Nobody said anything out loud, but the looks on their faces told me they knew it wasn't food poisoning. Lena was there the whole time, pacing the waiting room, crying into tissues, making sure the nurses saw her fall apart. She kept saying, this can't be happening, over and over like it was a line she memorized. I nodded along, quiet, tired, keeping my head down. People notice panic. They don't notice quiet. When the doctor finally told us Tanya would survive, Lena started sobbing louder. She clung to my arm like we were still close. I let her. I needed her to believe I still trusted her. Later that evening, 2 officers showed up at the hospital to ask questions. Nothing formal, just routine. They talked to me first. I kept it simple, said we'd all been home. Lena made tea, Tanya drank some, then collapsed. They asked if I noticed anything strange about the tea. I shook my head and said, I didn't even drink mine. That part was true. They moved on to Lena. I stood nearby while she talked. She sounded shocked, worried, confused. When they asked if she'd made the tea, she didn't deny it. Yes, I did, she said. But I don't understand how this happened. Why would I poison my own sister? That line again. Rehearsed. Too clean. The police didn't arrest anyone. No proof. No footage. Just a cup of tea and a collapsed woman. But then came the hospital report. Rat poison. In her system. Not a trace. A full dose. The kind of thing someone had to plan. Lena stopped crying after that. She went quiet, stayed in bed most of the next day. No hugs, no checking on me, no more pretending. I watched her. Everything she did. Every drawer she opened. Every call she made behind the bedroom door. She started locking her phone, deleting messages. I didn't ask questions, didn't accuse. I made us dinner, kept up normal talk. She barely responded. We weren't a couple anymore. We were actors in a room. But only one of us knew the script. Tanya stayed in the hospital for a few more days. They said she'd pull through, but she'd need time. I didn't visit. Lena didn't either. No one talked about the tea again. But I thought about it constantly. Something had gone wrong with her plan. And she didn't know I was already 10 steps ahead. It was small things at first. Lena staying out later than usual, saying she was with friends from work, or just needed a drive to clear her head. I believed her in the beginning. Or maybe I didn't, but I told myself it wasn't worth a fight. We weren't the yelling type. We just drifted. Her phone started buzzing more often, and she kept it face down. She took calls in the bathroom with the water running. I noticed, but I didn't say anything. I was watching, not reacting. That became my habit. One night, maybe a month before Tanya moved in, we had a fight about money. Lena said I was spending too much. She waved a credit card bill in my face. I told her I hadn't bought anything out of the ordinary. No new subscriptions, no big purchases. But she insisted. Said I was hiding something. That was the first time it occurred to me. Maybe it was her hiding something, and she wanted me to feel guilty instead. I checked the charges later. They weren't mine. Then Tanya showed up. No warning. Just a text from Lena saying her sister needed a place to stay for a while. I didn't argue. I never had a reason to hate Tanya before. Not then. Now, looking back, the timing felt too exact. I found an envelope on Lena's desk the week Tanya arrived. I wasn't snooping. It was half open. A letter from our insurance company. Confirmation of a new life policy. My name was on it. Beneficiary Lena. Double payout on accidental death. I stared at it for a long time. We'd never talked about life insurance before. Never even mentioned it. I went online, logged into the shared account. There it was, a fresh policy, signed 3 weeks earlier. No discussion. No reason. Just done. That's when it hit me. She didn't just want out of the marriage. She wanted something for it. And right after that policy changed, Tanya was suddenly living in our house. I remembered one night while Lena was out with friends. Tanya sat too close to me on the couch. Asked if I ever felt trapped. Smiled a little too long. I thought she was just being her usual self, annoying, flirty. But now I wasn't so sure. What if they were working together? What if the tea was never meant for Tanya at all? Everything was starting to make sense, just not in the way Lena wanted it to. Her cracks were showing. And now I wasn't just watching. I was connecting the dots. Lena fell asleep early that night. Her phone was on the nightstand, unlocked. She always kept it locked before, but maybe she got careless. I waited a few minutes, listening to her breathing settle, then took it and walked out of the room. I didn't check it in the hallway. I left the house. Sat in my car. No cameras. No witnesses. Just me and her phone. There weren't many messages. Most had been wiped clean. Her call history too. But I knew someone who could help. A friend I went to school with, now working in IT. He owed me a favor. I didn't give details, just sent him a copy of the backup. He called me 2 hours later. Whoever you're married to, he said, you need to be careful. He sent over a file. Messages that had been deleted recently. Some were from a saved contact, just the name M. Others were from a number with no name at all. The messages weren't obvious. No direct words like kill or money. But it didn't take much to understand what was being planned. One text stood out. Dated 2 weeks ago. From Lena's number. Once he's out of the picture, we'll have it all. I'll make it look like an accident. Another message from the unknown number followed. You sure he won't suspect? He's clueless, Lena replied. He's too soft to see it coming. I stared at that line for a long time. Then came the part one didn't expect. My friend had also helped me pull some activity from her banking app. She'd recently made 3 wire transfers to the same name, Tanya M. Ruiz. The dates matched exactly with Tanya's arrival and the new policy change. The amounts weren't huge, small enough to avoid alerts. But steady. One every week. I sat there, hands still, phone warm in my grip. I wasn't surprised anymore, just focused. Tanya wasn't just some extra piece. She was part of it. She had to be. The plan was clear now. Get me out of the way. Split the money. Cover it all as an accident. Maybe Tanya plays the grieving sister. Maybe Lena tells people I fell down the stairs. Maybe they vanish after the check clears. But something changed that night with the tea. Now I had proof. Not enough to show the police yet, but enough to know what I was dealing with. I slid the phone back on the nightstand, exactly where it had been. Lena was still asleep. Peaceful. Like nothing in the world was wrong. She had no idea I'd read everything. And I had no intention of saying a word. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I knew if I said something too early, she'd shut everything down and cover her tracks. I needed more. Something solid. Something I could hand over if it came to that. So I changed my approach. At breakfast the next morning, I kept my voice calm. I told her maybe we needed space. That things hadn't felt right between us. I didn't say it with anger. Just tiredness. Like I was giving up. She didn't argue. She didn't even look sad. In fact, she seemed almost relieved. She gave me a slow nod and said, maybe that's for the best. That told me more than anything. Over the next few days, I made myself look distracted, unfocused. I stayed out late, pretended to sleep on the couch. She didn't ask where I was going, didn't care. That's when I started putting things in place. The first camera went behind the bookshelf in the living room, another near the kitchen window, one under the hallway table facing the front door. I picked up small audio recorders too, ones that looked like chargers or pens, cheap but good enough. I placed one in the bedroom, one in her car when she was inside a store, and one under the sink near where she kept her purse. She never noticed. Once the setup was done, I started talking, just enough to stir the air. You ever think about what life would be like without all this? I asked casually while we watched TV. She shrugged. I guess. You ever think about just starting over? She smiled without turning her head. I already have. I watched her carefully. Her mouth said one thing. Her eyes said another. I dropped other lines too. What would happen if one of us just vanished? Crazy how fast things can fall apart, huh? You think people ever get away with murder? She never asked why I was talking like that. Never looked concerned. She just played along like it was a game. Or maybe she thought I was clueless enough not to see what was happening. She spoke a little more freely after that. Looser. Laughed a bit too much at things that weren't funny. Spent more time on the phone, but I noticed she started using headphones. Didn't matter. I already had what I needed. I reviewed the footage each night, took notes, marked anything strange. I wasn't rushing. I wanted the pieces to fall into place exactly. It was no longer just about what she'd done. It was about making sure she never saw it coming. Tanya woke up a few days later. She was pale, weak, and had dark circles under her eyes. I waited before visiting. Let things settle. Let her wonder why no one was rushing to see her. When I finally walked into her hospital room, she didn't smile. She looked surprised, but not happy. You, she said, her voice dry and rough. Yeah, I said. Me. She looked around the room like she wasn't sure what was real yet. Where's Lena? I sat down beside the bed. She hasn't come. That hit her harder than anything else. Her eyes narrowed, and I could see something shifting in her. She looked down at her hands, still hooked up to IVs. Then she asked, was it in the tea? I didn't say yes or no. Just watched her face. After a few seconds, she shook her head slowly. She told me to drink it. Said yours was cold already, and that I should try the fresh one. Smiled like it was nothing. You drank it, I said quietly. Yeah, I drank it. Her voice cracked. And then I woke up here. We sat in silence for a minute. The beeping machines filled the gap. She was going to let me die, Tanya said. Wasn't she? I nodded once. You weren't part of the plan. Not after she got what she wanted. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Stupid. I thought we were in on it together. I thought I was helping her. Her hand tightened around the blanket. Guess I was just cleanup. I leaned forward, kept my voice low. You want to get back at her? She looked up sharply. I have recordings, messages, but it's not enough yet. I need her to say it. Out loud. And you want me to help you? She asked. No. I want you to help yourself, I said. You help me get her to confess, and I make sure your name stays out of the rest of it. No charges. No police knocking at your door. She stared at me for a long time, thinking. Then nodded slowly. She used me, she said. Made me think I was safe. She thought you'd die quietly. Well, Tanya muttered. Guess I ruined her little plan. I stood up. You'll be out in a few days. When you are, we set the trap. Deal, she said. As I walked out of the hospital room, I didn't look back. Tanya knew where she stood now. And for the first time, she was on my side. I told Lena I wanted to talk. Just the two of us. One last dinner to clear the air. She didn't ask many questions, just said, sure, and smiled like she'd already won. I made pasta, lit a few candles, set the table neatly. I even wore the shirt she liked. Played the part. Calm, open, maybe a little regretful. That's what she needed to see. What she didn't see were the small black dots in the corners of one by the lamp, one behind the fruit bowl. Tiny cameras. One microphone tucked inside the candle holder. Everything was recording. We sat down. I poured wine. She took a sip without hesitation. To fresh starts, I said. She clinked her glass with mine. To peace. We ate in silence for a while. I kept the conversation light. She laughed once or twice, fake but trying. I could see her letting her guard down. She thought she'd pulled it off. Then came the knock at the door. I got up slowly. Opened it. Tanya stepped inside. Lena froze. What is she doing here? Tanya didn't smile. We need to talk. Lena stood. No, we don't. You should have stayed gone. Tanya walked in, stood by the table. Funny how quiet you got once I lived. Lena's face darkened. You're lucky you can even speak. I stepped between them. Maybe we should just. No, Tanya snapped, glaring at me. You think you're innocent in all this? You think you were just some poor victim. That was the plan. Make it look real. Loud. Messy. I didn't do anything, I said. You knew something was wrong. Tanya shouted. You just waited for her to slip. Lena looked between us, confused at first. Then annoyed. What is this? Tanya turned on her. You lied to me. Used me. Tried to kill me. I was supposed to kill him. Lena shouted suddenly, her voice sharp. Not you. The room went still. She realized what she said, but too late. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just looked at her. Lena stepped back. Wait, that's not what I meant. Tanya laughed bitterly. Sure. Say that to the cameras. Lena's eyes widened. She looked around the room. Her breath caught. Where? I held up my phone. The app showed a live feed. Everything she'd just said. Every word. You said it yourself, I told her. Should have finished the job. Lena backed toward the door. You set me up. I nodded once. You made it easy. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She just stood there, quiet now. Because she knew it was over. There was a knock at the door less than a minute after Lena went quiet. Not loud. Not rushed. Just firm. She turned her head, eyes wide. Who is that? I didn't answer. Just walked over and opened it. 2 officers stood there, both in uniform. One held a folder. The other had a body camera already recording. Lena Morris? The first one asked. She stepped back, trying to keep calm. Yes. What's this about? We've been monitoring a report of attempted poisoning, the second officer said. We have recorded audio confirming your involvement. You're under arrest. Lena laughed once, short and sharp. Are you serious? They walked in, already pulling out cuffs. She didn't resist. Just stood still as they read her rights. Tanya stood by the wall, arms crossed, shaking her head. I almost died, she said quietly. She would have let me. One of the officers nodded. We're glad you came forward. Lena turned to me while they cuffed her hands behind her back. You planned this. I looked her in the eye. I just listened. Her voice dropped. You think you're safe now? I didn't respond. I didn't have to. They started walking her out, one officer holding her by the arm. Her mouth moved, but she wasn't speaking to anyone, just muttering to herself. Tanya watched her go with a strange look. Not quite relief, not quite anger. Something in between. Once the door closed, the room was quiet again. The food sat untouched on the table. The candles were still burning. I picked up my wine glass, took a sip, and sat back down. Tanya didn't move. Well, she said, that was something. I nodded. She didn't expect the cameras. She thought we were both too dumb to catch on. She thought wrong. Tanya looked at the door again. You think she'll talk? Try to twist it. She already said enough, I replied. The recordings are clear. Tanya walked to the table, picked up the empty teacup Lena had used. She stared at it for a second, then set it down carefully. Kind of wild, she said, how a little cup of tea turned into this. I leaned back in the chair calm, like it was just another evening. That's what she wanted it to be, I said. Quiet, simple, clean. Tanya nodded slowly, but she picked the wrong target. Neither of us smiled. The officers outside were still talking on their radios. The cruiser lights blinked through the window, red and blue shadows dancing across the wall. I sat there, watching the colors move, and said nothing. Lena was denied bail. The charges were strong: attempted murder, conspiracy, and evidence tampering. With the recordings, the texts, and Tanya's statement, there wasn't much room for her to twist the story. I met with a lawyer the next day. Had all the insurance policies canceled and rewritten. Removed Lena's name from everything. Cleaned it all up. Then I visited Tanya. She had moved into a small apartment across town, still recovering but looking stronger. She opened the door in jeans and a loose sweater, hair tied back, smile easy. Well, well, she said, leaning on the doorframe. Look who finally shows up. I brought coffee, I said, holding up the cups. Then you're welcome here anytime. We sat on her tiny balcony. She talked a lot, mostly about herself. How she'd been thinking of moving to another state. How she felt like she'd dodged something big. I listened, nodded, gave her space to say whatever she needed. After a pause, she glanced over at me and said, You know, there's a pretty decent chunk of money coming out of all this. I didn't answer right away. She smirked. Don't worry. I'm not after your wallet. Just wondering, what do we do with all this money now? I looked at her. Really looked. Her eyes were bright. Her tone was playful, almost teasing. She sipped her drink and added, You and me made a good team, didn't we? I gave a small smile. Sure. But something in my stomach twisted. Tanya leaned forward a little. I mean, not saying we should run away together or anything, unless you want to. She laughed. I didn't. The air shifted slightly. I stared at my coffee cup, quiet. Her words hung in the air too long. Hey, she said, nudging me with her elbow. I'm kidding. I nodded, but I wasn't sure she was. The way she looked at me now was different. Not just playful, curious, calculating, like she was already thinking 2 steps ahead. I kept my face relaxed, voice calm. It's probably best we both just move on. Tanya smiled again, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Of course, she said. We sat there a bit longer, pretending everything was fine. But I could feel something shifting again. And this time, I wasn't sure who was planning what. Tanya came over the next evening. She brought wine, cheap cookies, and a half-hearted smile. Said we should celebrate, she joked, dropping the bag on the counter. Your monster of a wife is locked up, and we're both still breathing. That's rare these days. I nodded, putting the kettle on. Thought you didn't like tea. I don't, she said, kicking off her shoes. But maybe I'll try again. New chapter, right? The water boiled. I pulled out 2 cups, dropped a chamomile bag into each. She leaned on the kitchen counter, watching me. Funny, isn't it? All this started over tea. Yeah, I said, pouring the water slowly. She tilted her head. You sure you trust me enough to drink anything I didn't make myself? I made it, I said, placing one cup in front of her. She laughed, picking it up but not drinking. That's what worries me. I picked up mine and took a slow sip. Hot, calm, nothing strange. She didn't move, just watched me over the rim of her cup. The steam curled up between us. The smell was gentle but familiar. She raised an eyebrow. This smell, it's the same. I held her gaze. It's chamomile. She didn't blink. Or maybe not. I smiled faintly. Relax. It's just tea. She stared a second longer, then set the cup down without sipping. Smart girl, I said quietly. Neither of us spoke after that. The silence wrapped around us like fog. Tanya leaned back against the wall, folding her arms. Her eyes never left mine. Is this some kind of warning? She asked. I didn't answer. She nodded slowly. Right. Message received. Outside, a car passed. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once and went quiet. She looked down at the cup, then back up. Guess we'll never really trust each other, huh? I said nothing. She gave a small shrug and walked to the door, picking up her bag without looking back. Before leaving, she glanced at me once more. Next time, she said softly, just make coffee. Then she left. The door clicked shut. The cup of tea sat there, untouched, still steaming. I stared at it for a while, then turned off the kitchen light. No one would ever really know if it had anything in it, and maybe that was the point.